every episode of Buffy and tell you what they think about them. This is the Prose Visit Sunnydale, Season 3.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Prose Bros Visit Sunnydale. I am Geoff.
And I am Eddie Cruz.
And today we are doing episode 4 of season 3, Beauty and the Beasts.
I think this one should have been called Call of the Wild.
You know, that's something we rarely talk about, and I always mean to talk about the titles of the episodes. But we don't end up doing it.
Let's start now.
I liked the fact that it was Beauty and the Beast because of that comment that Faith makes early on about all men are beasts. And essentially you're dealing with several men as both figurative beasts and literal beasts.
But there's only one Beauty.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's Buffy, dude.
Okay. She has to deal with all of them?
Or in my eyes, Cordelia. I don't know. Yeah, it's Buffy, though.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I liked it. It was good. I just can't really stop and think of Beauty and the Beast without thinking of, you know,
Ron Perlman?
Bastion. And Ron Perlman. And,
that's the first thing that pops.
And, a clock that has a mustache and silly things. Silly things.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Right on. Should we just jump right into it?
Yeah. Well, the reason why I said it should be called Call of the Wild was because it starts with narration from Buffy reading Call of the Wild.
It's either Buffy or Whistler. One of the two.
I can't tell.
Maybe Angel?
They both have such a heavy, like, Brooklyn accent.
Yeah.
That, it's
all
really,
three of them.
Everybody. Yeah. So you start out, and it's just her narrating, and it's just kind of like running through leaves. And there's nobody dying or anything like that. Then you cut to Willow actually reading Call of the Wild to Oz. He's locked up because it's a full moon, last 3 days. So it's the first of the 3 days. Xander comes in and is like, hey, I'm here. Sorry I'm late. I'm here to help you watch Oz. And Willow's like, oh, good, because I have this big test to study for. And even though there's a desk right there and I could just study in here, for the sake of having somebody very, very irresponsible to watch Oz and thus progress the plot forward, you take over my duties and I'm going to leave to go study somewhere that's more quiet than a closed library?
Yeah, you really need Xander as that plot device.
Yeah, so she switches off.
Maybe Cordelia would have worked?
Yeah. Either one, I think a better excuse than having to leave a library to go study. It just seems ridiculous to me. Like where are you going to go? Somewhere where there's a lot of books and a computer?
You need somewhere where there's less books and more noise.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, oh, I study at the skate park. I only do weird things at libraries. But
this isn't in the episode, but I'll throw it out there. Maybe she can't study because it's not a very calming environment with Oz like that.
It would be. That is a way to explain that, but we see no evidence of it. And She's reading Call of the Wild, so she can read other things, obviously. She's not like so bothered by him that she can't read. And she doesn't
seem like Xander where he might need full concentration to study. She seems like she's good enough at it that it doesn't have to be.
She probably doesn't even need to study. Once again, another reason why she shouldn't have to leave. Either way, she leaves. Xander gets there, grabs the book. As soon as she walks out the door, he's using the book as a pillow and falling asleep. Right after that, we see the same panning shot that we see at the beginning. However, it is mixed with a boy getting mauled. And we cut to Buffy and Faith walking and talking about slang and the tickles you get from it. And Faith definitely kind of pushing towards this idea of like having a sexual experience while she slays. And Buffy kind of avoiding the subject because she doesn't really want to talk about it that way and doesn't really feel about slaying the same way that Faith does. And they end up talking about men, and Faith ends up revealing that she believes that behind every man there is an animal waiting to come out.
Yeah, she says that all men are beasts and only in it for the chase.
Yeah. So basically, you see the kind of duality that you have between Buffy and Faith and their perspective. Once again, in my opinion, this is more evidence that Faith has been hurt by men and maybe even sexually assaulted by men.
Yeah, I think somebody who views men not as comforting or anything, they're beasts. That's very telling.
That's very telling that that's what she sees in all men. No other qualities other than they're all beasts. Cut to the school, and Scott comes and says hello to Buffy and introduces us to his friends, Pete and Debbie.
More people we've never seen before.
More people we've never seen before. They're apparently Scott's childhood friends. And Pete doesn't say much, and Debbie is just kind of weird. I don't know. I didn't find anything special about them, right?
No.
Like, it's one of those telling moments. They're like, well, these guys are obviously here for this episode only, and they probably have something to do with the plot.
Well, I argue that they seem like they could be Scott's friends because Scott himself is kind of boring.
Very
and kind of
one-dimensional.
Yeah. It's like, all you people are replaceable. So maybe it seems like you could get along together.
Yeah, like none of you have any pictures on IMDb. It's just an empty thing where you had that one little role on Buffy and you thought you were going to make it and you didn't.
Did you really look them up on IMDb?
Well, yeah, I look up for the titles.
Oh, for the names. Okay.
Yeah, and the names and just to see what's up. And they cut to Giles and Willow talking about the boy that was mauled the night before. And Giles is just kind of covering his bases and making sure that Oz was taken care of the night before because the attack looks a lot like a werewolf attack. So they start investigating the library and where Oz sleeps inside of his cage. And Xander goes like, yeah, no, I was here the whole night. And he's like, I went in and out of sleep maybe a little bit. And, when I woke up in the morning, and Giles is like, you woke up in the morning? And Willow is just livid.
But why is Willow upset? And why is nobody mad at Willow? She entrusted the least trustworthy person to watch over.
I also think it's a lot to ask of somebody to stay up all night long just watching a werewolf.
Yeah,
you're in high school, you have a lot of responsibility, and on top of that, it's like, oh, by the way, you can't sleep tonight. Like, have you ever done a overnighter, just like a all-nighter, stayed up all night? I'm useless the next day. So they figure out that Xander fell asleep the whole night, and the window was open inside of the cage, which that's where I think that Willow should be upset at herself.
Yeah,
she didn't check the window.
Nobody did. How is that Xander's fault?
Yeah, I know, right?
It's not like he showed up and Oz was already locked in. At that point, he can't be, let me go in and check the fucking window.
Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous.
So maybe needlessly giving Xander shit.
So yeah, you can't be mad at Xander for that. Like, he's essentially coming in to save your ass, and he's going to do the worst job of it, right? I mean, and on top of that, neither one of them should be watching a werewolf. What happens if he escapes? They die? Like, I'm just going to stand here, and if you escape, I'll die.
It's so weird, too, because, all right, 3 people that can watch Oz because of the 3 days. Mm-hmm. Giles should take 1, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe Buffy, maybe she has Slayer duty, so they didn't include her. But Willow, and then, I don't know, is by default Xander?
Yeah, I know,
Well, no,
right?
Faith. They didn't need him.
They aren't using all the resources here, man. Yeah. This is a broken ship, in my opinion. And out of all of them, the one that probably needs the least amount of sleep is Giles. Because
he's older?
No, because he doesn't have to go to school the next day, and he's not a kid. Yeah, because he's older.
Well, I mean, he has to, I was going to say be a librarian.
Dude, I worked at Barnes & Noble. Putting away books isn't hard. And what happens if he doesn't put the books away? It's not like there's kids knocking on the door to get books in this school.
He has to make sure that, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck he does when...
Both of his jobs are super chill. Like, he's a librarian and being a watcher. I mean, it's in the name of what he does.
What do you do? I watch it.
Just, watch it. Like, I want to be a watcher. I'm watching this show. Well, he gets stuff like that.
The name's misleading. He's essentially a trainer. But
yes,
watch
but at
your
the
sons.
same time, like that training also doesn't come with a lot of physical activity unless he puts on the pads, which he doesn't have to do unless he's in trouble usually.
Isn't it funny that there's a show about a teenage girl who fights vampires and the person who trains her is called a watcher? What do you watch? Teenage girls
I watch a 16-year-old girl all day.
fight.
Yeah.
I'm
There
a
you
watcher,
go.
all right.
Oh, man. Where I come from, that's called a pedophile. So Buffy goes to see the counselor, right? And so he's you walk into his office and he's smoking, which caught me off guard in this new era. Like, yes, Ghostbusters in 1986 or whatever, they're smoking in that, but you don't expect there to be smoking
Like at a school.
at a school by a counselor on TV nowadays, even in the early 2000s or the turn of the century kind of thing.
And I knew instantly he was smoking because I remember the payoff of what happens.
Yeah.
It's really so they can have one scene later on. And
Yeah.
that's the only reason.
They want to have the scene of the cigarette having burned all the way down to the tip.
Yeah.
Yeah. That wouldn't work today because everybody's vaping. So everybody would be like just holding a vape. Like an empty cartridge isn't the same thing as a burnt out cigarette.
Yeah.
Also, vapes make you douchey. So he's not a douche. So she starts talking to him, and he turns out to be really cool, right? He turns out to be amazing. Also, the second black character we have on the show,
At least
which is...
I mean, I won't call him a main character, but
He's definitely not a main character, but he's, I think, literally the second black character. There might have been I think there was a Wesley Snipes vampire. I nicknamed him Wesley Snipes the Vampire.
I want to disagree about the Wesley Snipes vampire, but you put it in my head and I can almost picture him.
You can picture me saying it for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I would definitely say, oh, and then Wesley Snipes vampire. But I really do believe that there was a Wesley Snipes vampire. Either way, this is the second black person on the show with a speaking role.
By Wesley Snipes vampire, do you just mean a vampire that didn't pay his taxes?
Oh, sick burn. Hey, man, he did his time for that. I would be hiding that fucking Blade money too, man.
Blade one.
Like, I made 3 of those movies. That's essentially exactly like paying my taxes.
I would say Demolition Man money. What do you think you got more from?
I would say Blade.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a franchise, so by the third one, he was probably making bank, as opposed to Demolition Man, where they were like, you have no say in this, and by the way, we want you to dye your hair yellow. And he didn't. He had to. You know, they're like, here, put these on. He's like, but these are overalls. Yeah, I don't think he had much to say in Demolition Man at all.
Simon says dye your hair.
Yeah,
That's how they got him to do it.
Simon Says Sylvester Stallone got all the money for that movie. Yeah,
Probably.
Piece of shit. I mean, Sylvester Stallone. I don't like him. So the counselor's super chill, and Buffy likes him. So he's obviously going to die. Because anybody that's nice to Buffy and Buffy likes dies at some point.
Running theme, don't be nice to Buffy.
Don't ever be nice to Buffy. It's ridiculous, but it's true. If you're a teacher and you're nice to Buffy, you're going to fucking die. Jenny Calendar, the science teacher, the first principal, all nice to Buffy, all dead. So
What was Jenny Calendar particularly nice to Buffy? I mean, civil, but I don't think she went like some of these other teachers like out of her way to help her.
I mean, she died helping her. She died trying to get Angel's soul back.
So maybe that was okay. So was that trying to help her? Was that trying to redeem herself?
Well, it was trying to redeem herself by helping her.
Was the motivation like, oh, it's because I really want to help Buffy, or it's because I want to redeem myself?
Well, we can argue about everybody that's helped her's motivation as to why they were helping her.
Yeah, but we don't really know any of the others because they're not fleshed out characters. But
Yeah,
anyway.
that's true. I get what you're saying. Either way, don't be nice to Buffy.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So
we can agree on that.
So she ends up telling him and opening up why she ran away, right? She's like, there's this guy, and he's like, yes, and then you boned him, and he turned evil, right? And she's like, oh, yeah, she turned evil. And he's like, well, the guys do that, but I know about gentlemen.
You're definitely changing up the impressions or the accents.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going for right now.
Either
way, he pins her right on the head, but it's kind of like they're obviously talking metaphorically for what actually happened, right? Because, like, Angel literally had sex with her and then became an evil bastard, as opposed to what normally happens, which is like a guy will have sex with a girl and then never talk to her again, and thus is a evil asshole. But either way,
it would have been funny if she would have been completely honest. Like,
was like, and then he
I
killed,
boned this dude and he lost his soul. And he's like, yeah, well, guys can get mean afterwards. She's like, no, literally he lost his soul
and killed like 15 people in a week.
He was a bloodsucker. It's like, yeah, well, some people are like that where they just take and don't get... No, motherfucker. Vampire.
Literally. And he's like, well, in the dictionary, literally now means figuratively. So...
He was a lot nicer than this.
Yeah. So she ends up telling him all that, but when she leaves, by the time she leaves, you kind of realize that he is definitely good at his job and relating to Buffy in a positive way, and being there for her when she needs somebody there to be there for her, especially an adult. So the Scoobies all get together in the library and start discussing whether or not it was Oz that killed the boy. So they all argue, and Oz ends up walking out, but Willow stops him, and he's like, I really need to do this because it's a dramatic walkout, and I have to. And she's like, well, I'd let you normally, but she looks outside, and the moon's about to be full, and he's like, I guess I'll just lock myself up. He locks himself in the cage and tells her to look away because he is very ashamed at turning into a werewolf and doesn't want her to see him turn.
Was he ashamed? It almost seemed like when he was trying to walk away, so he has that kind of semi-witty, I don't know what you would call it, banter with her, but I almost got the impression that he was like still upset at her, even though it wasn't time.
I didn't really get like that he was upset at her. I think it was more of the fact that he might have killed somebody makes him think of the fact that he might hurt her in the future or now, and the thought of hurting her makes him want her to get as far away from him as she can.
I didn't get that.
I mean, that's eventually what ends up happening and why he leaves the show. So I think that reaction is in the back of his mind this whole time, and eventually is why he leaves, is because he ends up hurting her.
See, and what I was thinking, at least in this episode, because it was right after their semi-fight, and that's as close as a couple's argument we're going to get from Willow and Oz. And it seemed like he was pushing her away. You say it's because he was protecting her, but it may be both, where he's protecting her and maybe he's a little upset.
Well, I think he's upset at the situation and wants to keep her at an arm's length while he might be a murderer kind of thing. But my biggest thing is there's no reason for him to be upset at her. She hasn't done anything wrong, and there's no justification for him to act that way. And he doesn't seem to be a kind of person that acts without reason.
True, but I also think it's framed in an episode where we see a lot of misplaced anger, and particularly towards couples in relationships. So viewing that in this episode, that's where I was thinking that I felt like he had some anger towards her, or maybe displaced anger in her direction.
I think maybe also the way that he's speaking sounds angry, but the truth is that he's misappropriating his feelings, and they come off as angry, but they're not. They're more protective. That's just how I read it. So cut to Buffy patrolling, right? She's going through the woods, and all of a sudden she gets sideswiped by a vampire, right? She looks up, and there's Angel standing in all of his glory in a pair of cargo pants and nothing else.
He has shoes.
No, barefoot.
Well, he has shoes in the next scene.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think he went from I don't think Buffy bought him a pair of shoes on the way.
No.
I think that's super strange because so he's this feral animal last time we see him. He appears from this hell dimension. He had to have gotten a pair of pants from somebody.
From somebody. Or, I mean, you could argue that he stole them from, a clothing line outside of a house.
Why?
Because you have to argue that. Because he's a hero of the show, and you can't be like, he randomly killed somebody with really bad taste in pants.
You can't see his dingus flopping around while he's wrestling with Buffy.
I would have enjoyed that way more if they just had like...
I bet you would.
I fucking would have loved to see that full moon shining. But yeah, and it's like fucking rocket hose.
No, I totally get it. It's distracting. Where did he get these pants, and why these pants?
You know why it's like the most unbelievable? Because people that wear those kinds of pants don't have them in a size 30. Like it's too thin. They don't make those pants that thin. They don't sell those pants that thin.
Cargo pants?
Yeah.
When was the last time you've seen cargo pants? Well, at least
Fucking
now. Right? So
the
back
Big
in
Lebowski on Walter.
Okay,
those
back
are shorts.
back in the day for sure, but they don't still sell cargo pants. This is an honest question. I don't know.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen guys wear them.
Okay, now are those guys buying them currently, or are they just like 20 years old?
No, they're running in the forest like.
What? So are you waiting in the forest just to see if you could see some random fit dude with his dingus out wrestling people?
No, I just have one of those like fucking cameras ready to take pictures of dudes with their dinguses.
Yeah.
Let's go to Hot Topic and be like, hey guys, do you guys have any cargo pants?
I need some cargo pants to cover my dingus. Can you help me with that?
They would kick you out. That's actually what he says to Buffy once he sees her. It's like, I need something to cover my dingus, so I found these cargo pants.
Did I miss that scene, or was that like a deleted one that you had to...
It was deleted. You
okay.
had to, yeah, you had to go on Hulu Extras or something.
Okay.
No, just kidding. He's feral at this point, so he just growls at Buffy, and she's so taken aback by him that she's like, I guess, holy crap, this is Angel, right? Beats him up and takes him back to a random... what was that place? A church?
Wasn't that his like old mansion or whatever
like
the fuck
crypt?
it was?
It's a huge, well-kept, beautiful crypt.
I thought that... Well, obviously that's where she killed him, because you see the little body stain.
Yeah, so you see the body stain, and apparently this place just has like chains everywhere. Or did she bring her own chains?
Probably when she was in L.A., she picked some up in the Ann episode.
When she made those chains.
In the chain factory.
In the chain factory,
yes.
Yeah. Her and Lily made those chains. Yeah. Now Anne.
It all makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So, cut to Willow and Oz inside of a morgue. One question, how the fuck did they get inside of a morgue? Number two, have you ever been inside of a morgue? Do you think it'd be easy to get inside of a morgue?
Willow and Xander.
Willow and Xander. So, what did I say?
Oz.
Oh, yeah. So it's Willow and Xander, and Cordelia shows up.
Yes.
And they're, I guess, doing an autopsy on this body of the boy that got killed. I forgot his name, but Oz knew him.
Jeff.
And Jeff. Oh, that's your name.
Yeah, that's why I remember.
Did you die?
I hope not.
Was that you?
You might be talking to yourself if I did.
That'd be really, really sad.
You're
what if I just had, like, this whole time, our whole friendship, I just had two voices, and I'm just talking to myself.
You're doing this podcast alone.
Alone, yeah.
And people just listen because I feel really
It explains
bad.
why we're both such big assholes.
Then why do you argue with yourself so much?
If you created a fucking other entity, would you really want to argue that much? I'm argumentative, man.
Yeah, I guess. Good point.
So,
and I have to agree because I don't want to disappear. I don't want you to realize that you're just talking to yourself.
You don't want me to shoot myself in the cheek so I can kill you fucking Fight Club style.
I want to exist in your head.
Yeah,
so.
You have to.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So, so basically, she looks around on this body, on Jeff's body, and then once she's done, she immediately faints, and it's right after Cordelia and Xander are like, hey, you're really all about this. You're all about business. And she's like, it doesn't look like anything is...
Was she looking for stuff under his, nails?
I guess
and,
they were looking for, vampire
hair?
bites.
Or just something
right? conclusive that would be like, all right, well, this isn't a werewolf, obviously. So she faints, and they take her back to the the library or whatnot.
Because that's what you do when somebody faints.
Yeah.
You take them back to the library.
You know what's a good place? The library. They have books about fainting. Cut back to the library, and Faith is watching Oz, listening to Nine Inch Nails?
Was she?
I don't think so.
Some generic industrial?
It sounded like a generic industrial band. Probably the Ministry.
Okay.
The shell.
Oh, they're not generic.
Now they are. It's like a fucking empty shell of what they once were.
Well, you can't say now they are.
Yeah, they used to be pretty... They were pretty dope.
I like Ministry.
Not anymore.
Okay.
So Faith is watching him, and Buffy's just essentially like, all right, well, you go patrol. I'll finish up watching here. Right? And I kind of wondering why she did this, right? Like, it didn't really make sense to me, like why she would want to go back to the library. And then it hits. She starts studying.
She's getting all Dewey Decimal System.
Part of the reason why I was like, why would she want to go to the library is because why would information on a man coming back from hell be inside of a high school library?
It's Giles' library.
Yes, but does he have those books available to all the students? I mean, that was just a...
Apparently, that's kind of awesome if you want to check that shit out. And that would make a lot of sense later on. You know how everybody sort of, or even in this episode, everybody sort of knows how to do things? Internet's not what it is now.
Yeah, you can't Google things.
Maybe all the problems that are non-vampire related in Sunnydale are because they're going to the library, learning how to do this shit, and then doing it.
So essentially what you're saying is everything that's happened over the Hellmouth is really essentially Giles' fault.
Yeah.
Wow, that makes sense. And yeah, maybe you're right.
Look at the trio.
The trio is definitely partly Giles' fault, I would assume.
Damn.
Yeah. Slowly you see Jonathan turning into an evil bastard. Giles finds Buffy in the library, and she's still researching. She's fallen asleep researching. When she wakes up, they have a hypothetical discussion about whether or not Angel could come back from the dead, or if somebody could come back from a hell dimension, and what would happen if they did. And he essentially tells her if he were to come back, he would be traumatized.
Because he finds her reading a book about Akathla, and that's like the giveaway.
Essentially, she's like, all right, well, if he were to come back, would he still be Angel? And Giles respectively says no, and he explains that time's a lot different. She also saw that when she went to a hell dimension, and sees that in a hell dimension, minutes are years, and thus Angel's been gone for I don't know how many days, but he would have already spent centuries in a hell dimension.
Well, the whole summer.
Yeah.
So at least 2.5, 3 months.
Which is, I mean, if every day is 100 years or 80 years or whatever, that's a fuck ton of days.
Yeah.
Like now he's a 900-year-old vampire dating a 16-year-old.
Yeah. It's even worse.
Is that why he leaves? He's like, all right, this has gotten too creepy. So Giles says there's no record of anybody returning from hell. And
question real fast. Do you ever think Giles does not know the answer and just makes shit up?
Absolutely 100%.
Like he's all like, oh, there's no record. But there is. He just like, he doesn't know, so he's bullshits.
Yeah. Or maybe he just says there's no record when he hasn't read something.
Or it's like one of those things, there's no record, and in his mind he's saying, that I have read.
That I have read, yeah. I haven't seen a record of it. I would assume there's little white lies throughout the whole thing. I mean, he's proven that he lies to her to try to get out information from her in the last episode when he lies to her about doing a spell with Willow, or that Willow wants to help him with. So he maybe doesn't tell her the whole story all the time, you know, thinking that it's for her own good. So Willow says that her scan of the corpse was inconclusive, and this makes sense because the corpse was completely torn to shreds, right? Like, essentially, it could have been anything that killed him because he was in ribbons.
Well, like,
right?
what the fuck was she checking for anyway? Like, it's inconclusive. It's basically, like you said, hair, vampire, teeth marks, something, but, like, it's not like she ran it through, like, some DNA analyzer. Like, it's like, it was inconclusive. A good way of saying, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would understand why they would want to go see the body, because there might be something that obviously, like maybe some slime on it or something. Like, who knows what there could have been, but at the end of it, it's just a shredded body, and it could have been anything. But I could see why they would want to try. It's like when somebody says, like, oh, my fucking computer's broken. You're like, oh, let me see it. Even though they might have tried everything you're going to try. But until you see it with your own eyes, you're kind of like wanting to make sure that all the obvious stuff is not at fault.
Yeah. But usually when people say that, I'm like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Are you going to buy a new one?
That sucks. What brand was it so I don't buy one of those? So Scott comes up to Buffy after she's left the library and just starts being like super...
boring.
Yeah. Super boring, awesome boyfriend. So he's like, I just wanted to let you know that you look fucking amazing today. Like the stuff that all girls would want. Like all people, not women.
You look beautiful, but since you're super tired, I'm going to say you look amazing.
Because you didn't get enough sleep. So obviously it's like something anybody would want their significant other to say at any point of the day. I always want somebody to come up to me and say like, hey, just so you know, you're hot as shit and you have a huge dick. But nobody ever comes up to me and says that.
One day I'm just going to come up to you randomly at work and say that.
And I will appreciate it. And there will be a nice step in my day for the rest of the day. I'll just like fucking, oh, why is Eddie strutting everywhere? So she's awkward and she leaves awkwardly because she's going to see Angel and check on Angel, and the fact is that Angel's back from the dead. So
it was the cafeteria that I wish I didn't have to, but I do, or something like that.
Yeah, she's like, I gotta leave. I wish I didn't have to, but I got to, and she doesn't tell him anything. Right after that, you see Pete and Debbie sneak into a closet to start making out. At least it seems like they're starting to make out. As they're making out, Pete sees empty
Monster
jar.
Energy drink.
Yeah.
A jar of Monster Energy drink.
I was going to say Surge Cola.
Okay.
Or like Mountain Dew. It's very, very bright, like the inside of the glow sticks. Like when you pop them and then you split them open and spill them.
All right, a mason jar full of glow stick juice.
Yes, exactly. Was it Bejewel from Sinister actually took his go to sleep juice from Pete's stash. So they're making out. He sees this empty jar and he's like freaking out on Debbie. He's like, hey, what the fuck? Hey, where'd this jar come from? And he's like, did it spill itself? What the fuck? And she's just like, oh, nothing. It's nothing. And he's like, did you drink it? And she's like, no, I would never do that. And he's like, are you sure you didn't drink it? And then you cut to Buffy and she walks into the counselor's office. A weird cut. So like in between Pete and Debbie's spat, you get Buffy coming into the counselor's office and just laying it all on the line, like saying like, fuck it, I'm going to tell you all the truth about what really happened and what's really going on in my life.
Which is ridiculous. They need that one little line, the don't turn around, because the counselor is, like the first scene, smoking a cigarette and not facing Buffy. The chair is facing outside.
Out the window.
Yeah.
The same way he was before, and it gives her the opportunity to like just vent and say everything that she wants to say.
Why the fuck would you tell him not to turn around?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just it's convenient for the plot. Okay.
So then she looks at the cigarette and notices that it's completely burnt all the way down to the butt, and
he's holding his what is it? Those things called? I was going to say vaporizer, but
he's holding
his
vape pen,
whatever. Yeah,
and there's nothing inside of it, and she's just very curious as to why he won't turn around. And so she goes up to him and turns his chair and sees that he's been killed and he's been slashed. His eyes are slashed and his throat is slashed. And it's just as she's saying the final line, which is, he's back, right? She's saying the final line. She's like, explain to him about how Angel's back. And as she says, he's back, it's a very Freddy Krueger moment. Like, you see him dead, and she's like, and he's back, foretelling that she thinks that it's Angel killing all these people, and he's killed again. He's killed the counselor.
You think so? It's during the day.
Yes, it's during the day, but at this point, one person died already, and everybody is thinking the worst, right? So Willow thinks that Oz killed everybody.
It's her boyfriend.
Buffy thinks that Angel killed everybody, right? Cut back to Pete and Debbie, and you find out that it's actually Pete who's been killing everybody. Because as you get more in depth about what was in the jar, you find out that it's a serum that Pete's been taking, and he no longer needs it, he says, to turn into a gigantic, raging hard-on.
Yeah, he looks like a big, veiny, walking penis.
He does look like the biggest purple vein dick joke I've ever seen in my life. Just essentially, whoever the makeup artist was just like, can I just make a penis on his arms and his neck and his head? He's just going to be a big purple veiny penis.
And honestly, I think that was on purpose.
I think so. I mean, it's honestly a metaphor for testosterone and how
aggressive
aggressive
male
behavior.
attitude. Yeah. It all stems from
your dick.
Big veiny penis.
All the bad things you do come from the bad boom boom room.
And so can we talk a little bit about why you think he was taking this serum or made the serum? He makes that comment where
I started taking this for you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
is there enough to go on?
There's nothing you can really say that's concrete. You can make some assumptions. You could say that maybe he was kind of a pussy, maybe. Like he wasn't authoritative enough. And maybe Debbie was lacking kind of like maybe a more stronger male. I know that in the original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the motive was to create a perfect being, one that's devoid of all anger. And what it ended up creating was a duality, which is pure good versus pure anger. So maybe she was wanting somebody that was even better than him. Or maybe he just thought himself to be not perfect. Thought himself to be flawed and wanted himself to be more perfect for Debbie, you know, even though she doesn't seem worth that kind of, I don't know, perfection.
And they kind of point that out later in the episode. At the end of all this, I do want to bring this back up in reference to the title and some of the beasts that are in the episode and how that relates to other males, because that's interesting. You say of him not feeling, or him feeling inadequate, potentially. We don't know, but
he feels inadequate in some way, so he formulates a serum. The serum, I don't know what it was meant to do because he doesn't really cover that, but at the same time, it is a mirror of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So we have to assume that either he wanted to become more manly or more innocent.
So that'll lead me to this question. Do we, since we already know the storyline, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, do we really even need to have a reason? Or is it just like, whatever, we move on?
I guess that's the beauty of referencing that, right? It adds all this stuff without you having to explain it, right? So you have the episode where they did the Bride of Frankenstein, you kind of understand like, okay, well, there's no real reason for his motives, but you can kind of just take them from the original story.
And I kind of feel that the same way. I don't think we really necessarily needed to know, but maybe it would have made for a more fleshed out character.
Yeah, but at the same time, when they're introduced within one episode and killed in one episode, who really needs any more substance, right?
I don't know, man. Fritz was... He was deep.
Oh, if you're not jacked in, you're nobody.
Yeah.
You're not alive. I'm not sure what he said, but it was pretty good. Either way, he's been killing people because he's incredibly jealous. Because part of this serum is... I mean, it doesn't really seem like he's Dr. Jekyll at any point. The whole thing about Dr. Jekyll is that he's an amazing person, right? He's like an amazing doctor. He's a philanthropist. He's super nice. He's like the best, perfect man. Pete seems like kind of a douchebag.
Pete's kind of... He's boring Scott's boring friend.
Yeah.
And a complete asshole otherwise.
The only other like real sentence he has to interact with anybody is essentially telling Scott that he's into a awkward girl, right?
Yeah,
the only
like
thing he says he's like
manic depressive girl.
Look at Scott, interested in the awkward manic depressive girl. Only thing he says. So you can tell that he just goes from douchey to douchier.
But that's not even that bad of a comment. If they really wanted to hit home, they could have done something worse.
Like make him wear a trench coat?
Well, all right. That's later on with Jonathan. Yeah, that comment seemed bad, but it wasn't that bad. And from his friend's perspective, she seems like she's like kind of manic depressive. It's a callous way of saying it, but it didn't seem like, oh my God, this guy is like awful. Like it was like, all right, he's kind of.
I guess what I'm saying is that he's not portrayed as a perfect dude to the opposite of an evil dude. He's just portrayed as a normal dickhead high schooler.
Yeah.
You know, and he just gets super dicky.
Literally super dicky.
He has a super hard on. And Debbie turns out to be an apologist for male battering or an abusive boyfriend in the way that she reacts to him and the way she reacts to other people. Cut to the library. They figure out that the murder of the counselor happened during the day, so that rules out Oz, and unspokenly it would rule out Angel, and I'm not sure if Buffy really notices that or says anything, but she can't talk to anybody about it, so it's not really said in the episode.
Well, she seems relieved too. You
too,
can tell,
right? Everybody seems relieved in the room. And they start looking through new avenues as to what's going on. So Debbie has a black eye and goes into the bathroom. Well, actually, first she goes to see Oz, and he gives her some notes. And as he's giving her the notes, Pete is just growing a hard-on from behind a pillar and watching Oz give her the notes. As Oz walks away, you could tell that there's going to be a confrontation between Pete and Oz.
I like how they just throw one line in there just to get Oz and Debbie together, which would normally like
there would be no reason for them to get together.
But it's like, hey, I'm a genius. I have these notes that can help you. But I will say this: if he's so smart, would he have notes, or would he just have walked in and taken the test?
Well,
Oz seems like the type of person that would just walk in and take a test and wouldn't take notes and be able to ace it.
I completely agree with you. And on top of that, the fact is that I don't think he went to class. So why would he have these notes?
Yeah.
So, and Willow even mentions that, like, oh, you showed up. He's like, oh, well, I got an A on that test. And she's like, oh, because you showed up? Otherwise, referring to the fact that he never shows up to anything, right? So the fact is that he shows up, and he even tries to make a kind of remark to Debbie, like, hey, if you need to talk, let's talk.
Well,
like,
because he sees like the black eye.
Right? And so the next scene you see is Debbie applying no makeup on a pad onto her eye because that makeup, the black eye is already makeup. So they're like, don't ruin the makeup we put on you. So lightly pat it with this tissue paper. And Buffy and Willow walk in.
To blame the victim?
I don't know about to blame the victim. I think it's more of to try to empower the victim to stop apologizing for the batterer, right? So the thing is that they're coming in there and being like, hey, look at yourself. Would somebody that really loved you do this to you? It's almost like an intervention in the bathroom, right? They're just trying to get her to realize that what she's going through isn't necessary and that Pete is doing things to her that he shouldn't be, and she shouldn't be apologizing for him. So after they come up to her and they're like, look, he wouldn't do this, like somebody that loved you wouldn't do this to you. She is essentially broken, rocking back and forth and saying like, he really does love me. He really does love me. And Willow makes that comment to Buffy. I think we broke her. And then Buffy's like, I think she was already broken.
Which I found very weird. I understand that Buffy is a hero and she has an actual monster to fight. But it's so weird in that moment that she's like, she was already broken and just kind of took off without really trying to help her at all. I know that's not her purpose in the show, but it's very weird. I think it sends a weird message that's like, okay, she's broken. We can't fix her. I'm going to walk away and actually fight something I can fight. I just think that's...
See, that makes perfect sense to me because of the fact that there's really nothing Buffy and Willow can do to convince her to change. But what they can do is go confront a monster. And it's what Buffy does, right? So in this way, it's almost like the metaphor is nobody can help you get out of a bad relationship like that except for yourself. And I think that holds very true to real life. Because, I mean, when it really comes down to it, when you're in an abusive relationship, nobody can really get you out of it except for you. So I think that was a metaphor, and I think it works. I don't agree with what happens at the end, though. So Pete visits Oz, like we said, and we get Dr. Jekyll versus the Wolfman, right?
Dr. Veiny Penis.
See, and here's another example of...
Mr. Veiny Penis.
So, like, yeah, Mr. Veiny Penis. Mr. Poopy Butthole. Veiny Penis. So, when Pete gets there, he's Pete. And he's being a complete douchebag. Like, total doucherama.
Yeah, here he's being a fucking asshole.
A complete asshole. And that's where I'm like, there's no Dr. Jekyll here. It's just all Mr. Hyde with this character. I think that's where they kind of messed up. They didn't really create a character that's likable. So it doesn't really feel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It just seems like Mr. Hyde and Mr. Super Hyde. Like, he's like a douchebag and then super douche. And it's like Shredder and fucking...
It's Mr. Hyde and a annoying teenage dude.
Yeah. So essentially like an annoying teenage dude that's like half boner and then full boner. So that's something I didn't really enjoy about the episode. But... And they end up fighting. Buffy shows up and chases Pete out while they're about to tranquilize either one of them, because the Wolfman, Oz, has been released by Pete. Pete rips a door off the cage. So Oz is now also a threat. Just because when he's not locked up, he can be very dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So essentially they're trying to trank either one of them. And Debbie, being... the apologist that she is in the episode, knocks the gun out of Buffy's hands and makes them shoot Giles, which I thought was really funny. And the way he falls is really hilarious. Like, oh dear bother. Just like total Pooh Bear fall down, collapses, and they throw the gun at Faith because the Wolfman, or Oz, flees, and Buffy's like, you chase the Wolfman. You chase Oz and trank him, and I'll take care of Mr. Hyde. So she starts fighting Pete, and Pete escapes. And when he gets down to the basement, he regroups with Debbie. And she's like, hey, I helped you. Did you see? Did you see how I didn't let them shoot you? And he's like, yeah, but you're the reason why I'm in this mess in the first place. And lunges to attack her. We cut away from her. And we cut back to Buffy looking for them. Buffy gets into the room. Debbie's dead on the floor. Pete attacks Buffy. And lo and behold, Angel comes in with chains because he's ripped him off the wall in a cutscene right before
cargo
this.
Pants.
In the cargo pants still. And proceeds to beat Pete with the chains that Buffy made in the episode Anne. Knocking the shit out of Pete, right?
Yeah.
So he ends up grabbing Pete around the neck with the chains and chokes him to death, which Buffy allows to happen. And that's it. That's the end of Pete and Debbie.
Bye, boring Scott. Boring friends.
They're bye, boring Scott's boring friends. So that's really fucked up. You're so boring, all your friends deserve to die. So Angel...
I feel like more it's like, you're so boring, I don't care if your boring friends die.
Yeah. So Angel, like, straight up, like, chokes Pete to death, which is something that, I mean, when it really comes down to it, even though Pete has injected himself and turned himself into a monster, he really is still a human being. And Angel chokes himself to death and then has this, like, really...
I thought he broke his neck.
Either way. He puts a chain around his neck and kills Scott.
Okay.
I'm not sure which one happened first, but he either chokes him or breaks his neck. Buffy then holds Angel... Angel looks up at Buffy and is able in his feral state to say, Buffy? Like a little kid. Like Edward Furlong in Terminator 2. Just really whiny. Buffy? And then she holds him, and I guess all this murder is resolved by that. So far we have 4 human murders in one school. How many cops do we see, Geoff?
zero this episode.
Zero this episode. We see zero police officers. Nobody investigates anything that happens this episode.
Also, no Snyder.
It seems. And zero Snyder. So, you come back to the school after Buffy's holding Angel, and you have a Scooby moment where Cordelia is essentially like, oh my God. Buffy's telling her the whole story, and now Cordelia is like, oh God, I'm going to have serious thoughts all day now. You kind of have this like weird scene where Scott is shattered about his friend's death, and Buffy comes up to him and tries to console him, even though she was directly responsible for the death of... you could argue Debbie's death and definitely Pete's death.
Pete's.
Yeah. You could argue Debbie's death by saying, like, by not, protecting her when she was freaking out in the bathroom. She could have like made sure that she was in a safe place with somebody.
They even made that comment like, "Oh, it's going to be too late? Like, it's going to be too late once he kills you."
Yeah, or maybe like even chaining Angel up like harder. How did harder? Like, I don't know. It seemed like a very lazy chain up, right? Like that's how I would chain up a normal dog, not even like a vicious dog.
Well, whatever she ran the chains through seemed like it wasn't really chained through a stud, maybe just some wall anchors or something.
Yeah, just wall anchors.
Yeah.
And it was like essentially like a bookshelf L, right? Like something you would use to keep shelves up, not really.
And also, I know this was on, high up on the wall, but if I saw something like that and I were to chain my bike, I'd be like, oh shit, I won't, because somebody could probably yank that through.
Yeah.
It didn't look very sturdy.
It did not look sturdy at all.
You chain somebody through like a pole. You chain a bike through a pole, not through like...
Here's another question for you. How did Angel know that Buffy was in trouble and go directly from breaking himself free to finding Buffy? You think Feral knows, like Wolverine knows, or what?
You know what? This is so shitty, but I always just assume coincidence. They needed it, so it's like, oh, he just ran there.
Pawn shop ring.
Yeah,
the ring ended up back in Buffy's hands, kind of thing.
Yeah, there's no real reason for him to go directly to the school in daylight.
Yep. And
how was he okay?
There's no way to explain that.
That's kind of bullshit.
Complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so Scott's shattered. His friends are all dead. Buffy finishes narrating Call of the Wild, and the episode ends. What do you think about this episode, Geoff?
I didn't like it.
It was not that great.
No.
I was not happy with it. It did do some things that progressed the plot forward, which I was happy for. I wouldn't say that it's on the bottom spectrum of my list, but it's definitely not anywhere near the top or the middle. It's like on the lower half. I would give it like a 75 if I were to rate it in like kind of a percentage kind of thing.
And I feel like there's definitely more stuff I didn't like than did like.
Yeah.
In this episode.
Yeah.
So it was cool. Was this the first time we saw a cool looking werewolf monster?
It's definitely changed. So it's definitely less...
No more snout.
No more snout. No more Halloween. The first one was very Halloween masky, right? Like you could go get it at an old costume shop. This is no more snout. It's a lot hairier than the previous one and the future one. It looks more like, I would say, in tune with Teen Wolf than it is with American Werewolf in London.
Definitely. I like that better, though.
I do enjoy that more. I kind of like a hybrid mix of the two that they end up with in the next season.
So, can I tell you what I didn't like about this episode?
Yes, please.
Several things. So, the theme, of course, like the all men are beasts, domestic violence. I didn't like how they dealt with it, really. It's such a heavy theme, and for Debbie to die because of it seems... I mean, it's very tragic, and I get that's the point, but I don't know, I was kind of missing the gravitas.
It really did miss a lot of gravitas. A lot of horrible things happened. The actual tone of the episode didn't match the content, in my opinion.
Also,
I'm not sure if that content really fits with the show, though.
it's weird because that's really heavy that they kind of, in my opinion, gloss over. Also, Oz killing somebody. That's fucking major, and that happens in like the first act and then gets resolved very quickly. They don't really deal with it. I think they could have held on to that moment and really made it something. And that's part of the reason that I think that he was lashing out at Willow, because he's dealing with the fact that he thinks he may have killed somebody. But even based on our argument, we can't really, there's not enough there.
I think the biggest problem is that there's two Patsies, right? So Oz thinks he's killing somebody. It turns out to be Pete, but we also have Angel.
Uh-huh.
So by having those three, it's too much. You have a Spider-Man 3 all over again. There's too much going on. So you can't have that moment with Oz because it doesn't fit, right? There's too much going on.
Yeah, and
so they should have just focused on Oz and Pete, in my opinion. It would have been a stronger episode.
And then done the Angel later, because Buffy also has to deal with the fact that Angel's back and no one else knows, and it seems very rushed. You don't get the sense of any emotional attachment because everything is way too fucking rushed for the episode.
I think that either Pete or Angel had to leave. It either had to be one or the other, and either you had to have Angel killing people again or Oz killing people again. By having a third entity in there, you have too much. And also, at the same time, you need to have the Angel stuff in there, right?
And there's
Moving
a little
forward.
And there's a little bit of that with Buffy, where she's going to essentially the school counselor to work through her issues, but that becomes like kind of a side thing.
Everything in this episode becomes a side thing because there's so much going on. I would agree with you, but at the same time, it feels like they had a Monster of the Week and then kind of had to force all of this Angel stuff into it because he has to come back.
Yeah. Which I found out originally the intention was for him to never come back after season 2.
I would imagine that's what was going to happen, right? I mean, the way everything was written up to season 2 was that was the end of Angel, but because of popularity and demand, they had to bring him back, and the only way they could bring him back was to give him a spin-off show. So bringing him back on Buffy was just like, we have to bring him back so we can get him out of here.
Basically, they brought him back because they knew they were doing a spin-off show.
Yeah, essentially. And the biggest thing is doing it that way really fucks up everything else, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah,
like
but
it forces this. It's like the last episode, we had this great moment with Giles and Willow. And essentially the ending to the episode, in my opinion, is right after he tells her there is no spell. And it goes to her, and she's just like dumbfounded. And it has this black scene right after that, and that should have been the ending right there. But then they have the extra scene with Angel coming back. Mm-hmm. So, and then this one, it feels like, and then why did she need him, right? She could have taken care of Mr. Hyde, right? She could have, I mean, she's stronger than Angel. She's proven it time and time again. She's killed more people than him. Or beings than him. So, like, she's definitely not...
Because the message here is it truly takes a man to be able to handle a big veiny penis.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. George Michael could attest to that. George Michaels? George Michaels.
George Michael.
Remember when he got caught sucking that guy's dick in the bathroom?
I thought he was like jerking off in a bathroom.
No,
I don't know. Who knows?
He got caught because undercover cop asked him, like, "Hey, do you want to suck my dick?" And he said yes. And when he got to the bathroom, he got arrested. But when he was confronted about that on an interview show, he's like, "Well, I never say no to a good meal."
Damn.
Damn, George Michael.
Yeah. All right.
Wham.
So, can I talk about a little bit about the title a little bit more?
Yeah.
So, I don't think they meant this directly, but the title is Beauty and the Beasts. Mm-hmm. We can say the beasts are potentially all the men, but specifically Oz, Pete, and Angel. And it's kind of weird that all three of them are beasts and are the ones that the women in the episode truly love. You don't see Cordelia really loving or that affectionate towards Xander in the episode, and Scott is just kind of like this boring nothing. So it's like these beasts that these women are drawn to. And maybe that's not something they meant to put out there, but I feel that's there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really notice that, but at the same time, that makes sense. It shines a bad portrait on.
It's weird. I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel the same way about women that love Justin Bieber, you know? All the believers out there, you're doing a disservice to your gender.
Yeah, I don't know. That definitely struck me as something weird, and I wish I had a better answer for why that is the way it is. Maybe it's just the writing as far as all these plot points being mashed together. But it is kind of weird that
I definitely don't think they're trying to generalize and say, like, all women like douchebags.
No, but Scott,
like
who's the nicest guy, is boring, and Buffy's not into him.
Yeah,
I'm not into him. You're not into him. Nobody's into him.
But at the same time, Buffy's a different kind of soul, right? I mean, she has proven time and time again that she needs that kind of excitement. That's why she doesn't end up with Riley.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't compare Buffy and say, oh, yeah, you're like the spokesman of all women. You can't really put that on her. And on top of that...
But if the title, and I'm going back to the title, is Beauty and the Beast, you think of Beauty as this sensitive, delicate woman, right? And if we're going to say, is that Buffy? Is that Debbie? What does that mean? Why say Beauty and the Beast other than just because it's a cool sounding title?
And a reference towards... Yeah, that's part of the reason why I don't like the title all that much. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a bad title, and to be honest, at the beginning I was like, that's a fine title, but I just don't really understand them referencing that. I mean, if you try to compare it to the story and, you know, the Disney adaptation or whatnot, like Belle is a very, very strong woman or whatnot, but now we're talking about 3 different women, and you could say like they're all beauties, and them dealing with their beasts. I guess you can make the argument that they're all in such a situation that they are drawn to excitement now that they live in this world where there are vampires and stuff like that, that you need to be drawn to somebody that's rather animalistic.
See, now I think that's a great point,
but
it's not in the episode.
Exactly what I was about to say. So I don't really know.
We're just kind of making excuses to make ourselves feel better about what I think we both believe is a weaker episode and maybe written semi-poorly.
I think that it was hard to write this one well, given the introduction of Angel. I think it was... I mean, it got the points across that I think it was going for. I think Debbie was an unfortunate scapegoat, in my opinion. I think she could have been saved. I think it's one of Buffy's biggest failures as far as this episode. She really didn't need to die. It's unfortunate she did, and it's saying a lot, in my opinion, that like kind of thing, like if you don't stand up for yourself, you're going to end up dead. Yeah. Kind of thing. Like it's like, whoa, it's a little heavy-handed.
Or maybe if you don't ask for help, you'll end up dead?
Or if you don't like end up siding against a person, you know. And I mean, I obviously see that he's an abusive person and he's a piece of shit for it and other reasons. I mean, I'm definitely not Team Pete or anything, but I'm not anti-Debbie either. She comes off as annoying. I'm
anti-Pete, Debbie, and Scott. So.
Wow. But that's just because you think they're all boring as shit.
Yeah, fucking...
But do they deserve to die? Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Answer your own question well enough. You have so we both didn't really like this episode.
No.
Do you have anything else to say about this episode, or should we go to the deaths?
I think deaths.
Okay, so 4 deaths this episode, all human deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Geoff died, not me, or maybe me. Maybe you're talking to yourself. He died. Counselor Platt died? Platt?
His name was... I didn't even know his name.
I thought it was Platt. It's something like that. The counselor died. Debbie died from Pete's hands. And Angel killed Pete in a pretty cool fashion.
Yeah,
But yeah,
pretty good.
4 deaths, no cops.
Oh, my God, man. I understand because it's easier that way. I mean, the end of season 2 proves that, like, once you have Buffy assaulting a cop and then later having to not go to jail for it, it kind of messes things up. At the same time,
To the point where you don't even need security guards in the library.
Nothing. So many people have died at this school, and they haven't even hired one security guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next episode, what do you think?
It's Homecoming, right?
Yeah. Next episode's Homecoming.
Yes. I think I remember this one. Obviously, it's Homecoming. Buffy and Cordelia are all dolled up. They're in a limo,
the whole
right?
thing is Cordelia decides that she's going to go for Homecoming Queen, and Buffy's going through some personal shit and kind of wants to come back to school and recapture some of the essence that maybe she had at her last school where she was Homecoming Queen, and decides to go up against Cordelia. And it turns into a fight amongst them two. All the while, there's an outside vampire in Trick who hires some assassins to kill Buffy.
You should let me start because I remembered way less and it would have been way funnier because I would have butchered it. My thing was like, they're in a limo. They look really good. Something happens, and is there assassins?
Yeah, all that really happens is for 40 minutes, they take turns sticking their head out the sunroof of the limo, yelling at guys on the side. Fucking limo, bro! Because that's what you do in a limo, right?
The good thing is, yeah, totally. We get to see more Cordelia, which, of course, need me some Cordelia.
Yeah, I think that's essentially what this episode is, a return to Cordelia.
Another thing I didn't like about this episode, every character is underused.
Yeah.
Every single fucking character.
Every single one. I think that the one that was probably most used was Debbie, and she didn't really deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how you doing?
I'm 5x5, B. Begrudgingly 5x5, B.